Family. It's 8 o'clock. It's Thursday. That means only one thing. It is time to talk. I'm your host, Kenneth Campbell. Big shout out to IMP. Again, if you haven't seen the Stereo Bump or you want more information about the Stereo Bump, definitely reach out to them so they can get you that information where you can save time, save money, and be more effective for your patients. Big shout out to my good friend, Dr. Jason O'Geist. Big shout out to Knowledge and Nonsense. And again, I know everybody saw my post. You've seen it going crazy all over LinkedIn. I just wanted to make sure go pick up your copy of Time to Talk, What They Didn't Tell Me. Great reading. And I'm not saying that just because I wrote it. I'm just saying, hey, if you're a leader and you want to dive back into the core of why you became a leader, that might be good reading for you. If you're a potential person thinking about going into leadership and want to know some of the steps you could take, that's going to be good reading for you. Again, reach out, get a copy. If you don't see the link, hit me up in my LinkedIn and let's get you to the right place. Family, I posed some questions to everybody earlier this week and I just wanted to dive in on that a little bit. I want to talk about inclusion. Let's talk about getting people involved. Let's talk about when we are trying to grow the industry in your area, there should be chapters, events, conferences, all of these things. But how do you get involved with that? What does it mean to be involved with the chapter? That's what we're going to talk about today. So when I started researching it, I found out, that just from an overall standpoint, we span 50 chapters over 40 states and 5 countries. Let's think about that for a second. There's over 50 chapters that covers 40 states and over 5 countries. Think about the networking possibilities, think about the educational possibilities, and all of this is at our fingertips. But for those that don't know how to get there or what that entails, that's what we're going to talk about tonight. Rebecca, I see you checking in. Good evening to you. Uh, let's talk about that with a chapter president. Let's talk about that from somebody who sits on committees. Let's talk about what does it take for you to become a part of a chapter? What does it take for you to start growing in this field with your area or region and your even local teams around you that you may not even know are part of a chapter? We're going to get there. Hey, Casey. Hey, people are checking in because they want to know what's happening with this. And it's a very important topic because it keeps us growing in numbers. It keeps the networking going and the connections and professional, whether it be vendor, other hospitals. This is all important to growing our industry. So I invited a good friend of the family, Miss Marie Brewer, to the platform so she could talk about her chapter, what it entails, and just in general, how do we get people involved? So family, could y'all please welcome Miss Marie Brewer to the platform today? Hi, Marie.
Hey, thanks for having me, Kenneth.
Hey, no problem. I wanted, you see, I even wore my fancy stuff. I'm here dressed up. I don't even got the time to talk t-shirt on today. I'm here just because, this is important. It's serious. And I want to make sure that people understand the gravity of what it means to be a part of something like this. So first question out the gate, what is a chapter?
As it relates to HSPA, it is a group of people that are formed. There's a board, there's bylaws, and the purpose of most of these chapters are education, and those can be virtual opportunities, they can be in-person opportunities. There are several networking things that we can do within our own chapters and with others as well. So for the most part, it's a group of people come together and learn about a topic. And the chapters we're talking about today are sterile processing based. Now,
Okay.
yep, For example, my chapter has infection preventionists on it, surgical services directors, we have nurses, we have risk management, we have SPD leaders, we have frontline techs, surge techs, so we have, and even endoscopy techs. So we have quite a broad range of really fun people to network with and learn from.
Okay. Michelle Peoples is checking in. We got everybody invited in here today. They want to hear about this. So you said you have infection prevention and doctors and surge tech. So being a part of a chapter is not inclusive to just sterile processing.
Not necessarily. All of those different job titles have a vested interest in the surgical services arena. And as we all know, sterile processing are the cornerstones, the foundation of those programs.
Okay, so with that being said, let's go back, you said a group of people are formed. What does it take to be a chapter?
Sure. So in and of itself, when you're forming a chapter, you're going to need to create bylaws, the rules that govern your chapter.
Okay.
And that you'll need to form a board. And then in and of itself, in that chapter, you can structure your own activities the way that you see fit. You can apply to become affiliated with HSPA or function on your own. And when you are ready to go moving towards the HSPA, you will apply, or those of us that already are a part of it, we apply for recharter status each year. And so HSPA at that point in time will help look at your geographical region and see if indeed the area you're in has coverage with your chapter. And if it doesn't, then they have, there's opportunities there to build your own chapter as well. So, in and of itself, the chapter starts within a geographical region in and of itself. It's not necessarily restricted by state lines. It's more of a region.
It's interesting. So I was under the impression that all chapters went through HSPA or other affiliated entities, but so you don't have to be a part of HSPA to actually be a chapter.
Right. And so, for example, we're the Central Service Association of Iowa, and we're affiliated with HSPA. We're a chapter within the HSPA organization. So, and there's a lot of wonderful opportunities we have being a part of HSPA. There's no doubt about it. However, as part of the board, it's our responsibility to put our recharter in every year. And that includes information about the education we offer and, who the board members are, any bylaw updates, those type of things. Yet, however, you don't actually have to be, affiliated with an organization to provide education within your state or your region.
Okay, interesting. See, Arlene's checking in. I know she's a part of her chapter down there. So great. Other chapter members could chime in about some of this as well. So you said that you start out by actually forming a chapter. You have to do bylaws and create, I guess, the hierarchy. So how does that come about? Who appoints who as president, vice president, and all these things? Who does that? Is it a voting process? Or do you go out and get members first, and then y'all come to a conclusion on that part?
I think at the root of it, you need to find the humans. You need to find the people that want to be invested and engaged in the chapter first.
Right.
And from there, there's a lot of organic ways to build a chapter. And Iowa is one of the oldest ones in existence. And so I can't necessarily speak to that part of it. However, each year there certainly are folks that apply and that are supported through that process. So I know that's not really a direct answer, but there's a lot of ways to get to that point.
So there's voting as far as who's going to be, so it's like a runoff, like a election process per se.
Right, and that's according to the bylaws you write.
Okay, so if we write in, the president would be elected by said number of members or whatever you decide for your chapter, you get to decide who sits on that board and runs that board.
Theoretically, to start, yes. And then once you're rolling, then you want to have some sort of election process that's, democracy based.
Okay.
But at the same time, when you look at some of our more established chapters, for example, your region,
right.
Massachusetts, it had, Mark Duro and Karen at the helm for 20 plus years. So sometimes you can't necessarily find folks who want to make the commitment, the volunteerism. But it's so important that you do reach out, become involved, do something to help build that chapter. Because I'm going to be honest, those of us who've been at the helm for a while, it does become a lot, and we'd love the new blood to come in and help support our different chapters throughout HSPA.
I guess since you brought it up, and for people that don't know, I officially will be taking over the Massachusetts chapter as president, and bringing that back to prominence and doing great things. Karen has passed on some wonderful knowledge, and we've been having some ongoing conversations. So that will be something that's happening. So I'll be in your shoes soon. So this is working for me too. I'm picking brains and working at the same time. I'm getting there.
Well, and Kenneth, I would say that, if you're in a region that's that really doesn't have a chapter around you, don't be afraid to look up any of the chapters and ask for help from a board member. Just most of the websites, or even going to the HSPA website and looking at chapters, there's a list of individuals on different chapter boards. So you can reach out to any of them and, ask for help getting started or looking for mentorship. Certainly there's many of us that would be willing to help.
Casey just said, it is so important to get more involved, SBF family. Join your chapter, network, and connect with your peers. And couldn't have said it better myself. We're going to get into that networking and how that works. But for just what you just said. So as I looked it up and said there's 50 chapters that go over 40 states. So what happens if I'm in an area that doesn't have a chapter? How do I become involved? Do I just go over to the next state to that chapter meeting and say, hey, I don't have a chapter, I want to be a part of yours? Or what is there a process for that?
Every chapter president I've ever encountered has been very welcoming to anybody wanting to attend. Now with those of us returning to in person, I'm speaking about like Tony Bondon. He's going to be inviting like an 8-state radius to an upcoming event in April. And so really, I find that like I said, all of the chapters are very welcoming to people that want to come and attend CEs and those sorts of things. Check out their websites, check out the HSPA website, look for a connection there and reach out.
Okay. And I see Arlene saying, yeah, the beginning of the year is always recharter time. So everybody's getting those recharters done. So I can reach out to somebody and say, hey, I want to be more involved and I don't have an area over here. And is there one of the things that came up and one of the questions I was asked, do you apply to be a part of a chapter? Do you apply to be a part of the chapter, or is there dues? How do you say I am a member of this chapter?
So again, each chapter kind of has their own bylaws and how they structure it. So there are some chapters that charge dues. There are some that do not. Some ways to apply has an application process. For example, for my chapter, if you subscribe to our website, you are considered part of our mailing list and part of our chapter. So it really depends, I think, especially on like your geographical region. So Iowa is a very broad state, east to west. And so we try to vary our chapter events, more towards Des Moines and the central side of the state, and then into the corridor side of the state, which is like the University of Iowa, Iowa City, Cedar Rapids area. So really, for us, it's simply about a subscription and trying to make it as inclusive and as simple as possible to get the information out there. But there are other chapters that are extremely robust as well, that have monthly meetings, that have a little bit more formal process. So either way, again, very welcoming, all the chapters. So don't be afraid to reach out and explore what your opportunities are in your neighboring regions.
Okay. So that would bring me to my next question. We'll talk about, like you said, we'll just say Iowa. Thank you, Arlene. She's telling me congratulations. I think, everybody's like, hey, you're going to be a part of this chapter thing now. So great. I'm all for the challenge. So I'm up to it. I'm learning stuff as we go. And people like Marie, yourself, will definitely be ears that I lean on when the times get there. So let's take Iowa, as you said, big spread out state. Is everybody or every hospital in the state, are all of those techs, doctors, nurses, if they want to be a part of the chapter, are they all coming to that central location? Do you, if they join the list, they get their mailers, no matter what part of Iowa they're in, they can all participate for that chapter. Is that
Yes,
how that works? Okay.
exactly. And, we sometimes have folks come from South Dakota, Minnesota, Nebraska, Missouri, occasionally Illinois. While that isn't a large population, if we're on the eastern side of the state, we're only 3.5, 4 hours from Chicago. So it depends on what's going on in each state at each time of year. We have some options to join different areas and participate in CEs and education such as that. And the other thing I would say is, so many of us have been in a virtual state for so
Right.
long, right? And so returning to in person and it can be a little anxious to do that, right? Because
Right.
you don't know if people are going to come with all the amount of virtual education that's out there. And so for those chapters that are getting back out there and starting to do the in-person things, if you want to see those things continue, you have to get out there and be a part of it.
Okay. Veronica's checking in. Hello, Veronica. I had the luxury of being on the opposite side of the table for the Florida Fire event. And what I learned as being a vendor, what I learned is that I know that they have people pre-register and this kind of thing, so you know how many people are supposed to come. But there are people that show up that day as well, and on the spot registration. And I saw people coming from all different areas to that event. So how do you plan for something like that? I know you said people can sign up on the website and they're considered getting the subscriptions and stuff like that. But if you're holding that event, how do you plan for numbers that are unknown or unseen?
So I'll give you an example of a planning structure. So for an event pre-COVID range, we might see 130 registrants, and that's
Okay.
not including the vendors, because we have several vendors that are certified that sit in on the CEs as well.
Okay.
So about 130 registrants. I get a head count for my vendors as well. And then with only about 130, I may add 15 to 20
Okay.
as a range where we might have 15 to 20 walk-ins, because really in in the northern states with the snow and the winter weather, you don't always know who's going to show
Right.
up one way or the
Okay.
other. And so I've found that most vendors, they do a head count the day of and they bill us for what we spent, but there is that little bit of range.
Okay. You mentioned the
Really don't
vendors.
want to turn people away.
Right. I was gonna say, if they come to the door and they want to be there, I know we always accommodate and let people in. So, you mentioned vendors, um, and one of the things that I know that is ongoing theme through all chapters are the vendor support or links to the vendor support and talking to the vendors. What kind of vital role do they play in making these successful events?
Oh, tremendous. Can't do it without them.
Okay.
The greater the vendor participation, the less money that you pay as an attendee. So, for example, if we're charging $75 a head, okay, for
Okay.
a day, and that includes breakfast, it includes lunch, it includes the afternoon snack, the vendor fare, and all the giveaways and things like that, the raffles that you do.
Right.
That really is going to be in a position where the chapter's barely going to break even, because you have to pay for not only the site itself, the food, the beverages, all of that. And yes, some of the vendor tables and things that you can do can offset that. But really, without the vendors, it becomes very challenging, and the onus for paying for the event is on the attendees at that point.
Okay. And you mentioned vendor fairs. So the vendors come in and present. I'm assuming they present items to the group, and that's where we get the CEUs and stuff to balance out.
So what I normally would see is you have an agenda of presenters, and that could be anywhere from one if you're going to just do a single CE, a single speaker, or you could have a whole day or even 2-3 days worth of speakers. So the
Okay.
vendor fair usually happens somewhere in the middle of all that. It is a separate room normally from where the speaking is happening and the actual learning. And it really is, when we say vendor fair, it really does look like that. There's tables set up. They have a lot of their wares set up, lots of product literature, pamphlets, and we usually couple ours with lunch and make it about 2 hours. So folks, including the vendors, can grab lunch and then circle around to the tables. And this is one of the most beneficial moments for our vendor partners and friends, because they get to share with us a lot of their products that they have that could help improve our process in our own facilities. There's often opportunities where they will come in and help us in our own facilities. So to meet folks in those moments, to bring home some different types of new products that are out there or are up and coming, and bring that back, to our own hospital leaders, that becomes a great networking opportunity, process improvement, and a way to build relationships with those folks that can support you not only at your chapter, but at your own home facility.
So I love it, and I know there's somebody sitting out there like, she just hasn't told me yet why this benefits me. So we have, as you said, we could have surge techs, we could have doctors, we could have infection control, we can have all of these other people involved in a chapter. So with that being said, I know that we are HSPA for our side,
Yeah.
but what about for them as far as like AORN, or what about AST? Do Cigna? Do we ever do events where we actually, let's do a joint venture together? And
Absolutely.
since we have all these people, since we have all these different groups coming together, if we do a joint venture, does that get everybody involved in CEUs for everybody, not just sterile processing?
Yeah, 100%. And so you have APIC and you have AORN are some of the larger chapters that we seem to partner with. I have seen advertisements where they'll have APIC, AORN, and HSPA all jammed together, and it's like a communal event. And so, I mean, I definitely think that the speakers can tend to, lean more towards the surgical services side of things, or the endoscopy suite side of things, rather than like direct patient care on the floors.
Right.
That way, we're all still learning about things that matter. We're all still there for that common purpose, and sometimes we overlap in different ways too. Where I've spoken at APIC nationally, and I've also spoken at like state AORN chapter pieces or opportunities, CEs that way. So a lot of times when I speak at those, I'm explaining a new AMI update that came out, or let's talk about the AORN guideline, perioperative guidelines, 2022, what changed. So really just more educating on standard-based things when I'm working with APIC or AORN. But there's so many opportunities to partner, and if your chapter is struggling, I encourage you to do that.
Okay.
Financial load.
All right, Wayne is checking in. Welcome, sir. He says dynamic show. He's here with us. Everybody, this is a topic that I think everybody is interested in. Only for, like I said, if it's only just for the educational purposes, but now you're learning how that actually works. So, speakers. I know we have our vendors and the people that make the things behind the scenes, but when it comes down to speakers, as you just said, we can have a diverse group of speakers, because if you have AST, AORN, endoscopy, all these people in the same room, I know they're not going to want to know what the latest BI is. They're not going to want to know that type of stuff. So do you get your speakers based on once people register, or you've already set your agenda and said this is what we are presenting?
Yeah, I think it depends on the chapter. Where some chapters set an overarching theme, right?
Okay.
And you'll see that in advertisements, in thematic choices of the speakers and the content. But there are others where sometimes there have been years where I've been able to bring in some really dynamite speakers, and I've given them carte blanche, like, let's go ahead, share what you know. Right.
Right.
You've got your pulse on the industry right now. What are you hearing? what's happening in your region, or you were just in Barcelona, what's going on over there in Europe, whatever they're passionate about. Some have done speaking engagements about their volunteerism, their mission work as it pertains to SPD. So there's so many different topics. And you'll see more and more now where there's more topics about wellness, not burning your candle at both ends. How do you keep yourself from burning out? So what I'm loving about some of the new things that I'm seeing are their broader range of speakers, broader range of topics. Like last year at HSPA, there was a section Corey Offset spoke about forest therapy and how that can benefit you towards the end of one of her presentations. And I thought that was lovely. There are also, we're seeing more people outside of just sterile processing leaders speaking. We're seeing providers starting to speak more often. We're seeing infection preventionists getting up and speaking more often. C-suite folks that are really dialed into our space and even just the way our country's heading from a budgeting perspective in the healthcare industry and the squeeze we're all feeling. So I'm really enjoying seeing some of the symposiums that have come out recently and some of the new topics that it definitely is a more varied amount of topics that are coming out. I think that it's fantastic. What the other piece I would put in there is that since COVID, before it was about, to me, it felt more like we were getting together, we were learning in person, and that was huge. Now with all the virtual opportunities, I'm finding when I go to an event, I'm so much more engaged in the networking and talking to other fellow human beings. And that is a lot of times where you find the speakers.
Right. So that would technically be one of the benefits, is you actually getting to talk to people.
Yeah. Connect with them.
All right. We're going to talk a little bit more about chapter events and committees right after this commercial. Let's take a quick commercial and we'll come right back, because you mentioned something interesting there about some of the speakers. So we're going to get back to those chapter events and committees right after this commercial. Welcome back, family. Welcome back. Again, big shout out to IMP. And you saw it on there, the Steri bump. They also have the leg positioners. If you need any information, again, the contact information, reach out to them so they can help you out. And I know you saw it. I know somebody should have been shopping already. Scrub Ball is coming. Get your tickets. And better yet, if you do have somebody to nominate, make sure you nominate them. A healthcare hero that you feel does more than their fair share, goes above and beyond, and needs that recognition. Go to scrubball.org and make your nomination for those. Get your ticket too. Get your ticket. Make sure you get your ticket. Marie. Okay, so we talked about the actual events. And so we set up our big chapter meeting. We got vendors coming in. We got dynamic speakers coming in. But what about the behind the scenes? What kind of committees are there when you're talking about your chapter? What different committees are included in that?
And again, I hate to default back to this being a little different with each chapter. I really do think it depends on the size of your
Okay.
chapter and the nature of it. Most chapters you'll find that there is a board and there's a specific structure where there's a president, secretary, treasurer. They may have a membership director, they may have members at large, but normally with most, you're looking at a core group of people and then some volunteers that help. When you get
Okay.
into more of HSPA and you're in a much larger setting, that's where you have professional development committees and you have the chapter rep committee. And there's a lot of different opportunities that they're looking at ways to improve education for the industry.
Okay. Veronica said, hey, networking is key. And one of the important takeaways from this is that networking piece. So when we're talking about your local and regional networking, what does that look like for somebody? I'm new to the field. I want to join this chapter. I don't know how. I want to reach out. I want to network. I want to grow. What do I do? I know you said that you can look on HSPA and see different chapters you can reach out to. So, how about the people in my area? How do we connect?
Well, I would start with your chapter. And like if you can look it up, Google your chapter, or the other thing you could do is start at the HSPA website. And usually that there's a chapter president listed there with a direct email or a chapter website where you can reach out and contact them and go from there.
Okay. So now I get involved. How many meetings do we have? I know you said some chapters do monthly. At a minimum, do we do one event a year, or is again back to the bylaws and say whatever we've written, that's what we're going to do?
Bylaws.
Okay.
And
So
so, but for example, it may say so my bylaws state we're going to have 2 events a year.
okay.
Now, it doesn't necessarily say when I have to have the events. It doesn't say whether they're going to be virtual or they're going to be in person. It's just the idea that the mission and the function of the chapter is to have education put out there for your geographical region at a certain sequence per year.
Okay. So that goes back to that keyword keeps coming up: education, education, education. For me, joining a chapter, and I want these educational seminars, or I want to be more educated about the profession. How can a chapter help me with that?
Well, first of all, networking, huge. Most folks that attend these seminars bring a business card, or you connect with one another via text message. You exchange phone numbers, you exchange emails, or LinkedIn information. And so, kind of like Veronica is saying, networking is key. That is my first piece of information, is connecting with the other epicumens that are in the room, because that's where I get most of my my help with when I'm struggling with a problem. As far as what it provides to you when you're in person, besides the networking, normally all the speakers have 2-3 objectives, and they roll through those throughout their presentation. Most chapters have a fairly varied, it's not all the same topic that we're rolling on, right? You're going to have different topics, and
Right.
there are usually technical components to it, or leadership components to it, or educator based components to it. So most folks, when they're designing their agenda, it's varied enough that it offers something for everybody at every level of development, whether you're a frontline technician coming in the door or you're a seasoned SPD director who's been doing this for 30 years. You want it to be a rich experience for everybody.
Okay, that goes back to when we're tying in like those infection control people, those surgeons, people who want to know or have, like you said, have that vested interest in, okay, what kind of education are we giving to sterile processing, or what kind of changes are there in the industry? You spoke about like you're going out talking about Amy and these type of things. So when you're bringing in speakers of that nature, if you looked at your registry, you have a bunch of doctors and stuff, do you kind of gear them in a direction, or you let them still just speak on whatever topic because of the diversity of the crowd? Does that make a difference?
I'll speak for myself only. About 40% of our attendees are not sterile processing techs. or leaders. They are nurses or, operating room, endo, infection prevention, all those different risk management, all those different people. And so for us, we just really look at trying to put together a nice varied subject matter based, where we're looking at being able to connect with every person regardless of what the nature of their role is. And so there are some things that are going to be much more advanced. There's some things that are going to be rudimentary, but I feel that that is a rich opportunity, because every time we go back to basics, like I'll talk about like the Health Mart College of Clean and Stephen Kovach, right? Every time I see some of those more back to the basics of sterile processing, I have aha moments. I have moments where I connect. And so I think that having that broad range of education matters, regardless of where we are at in our own professional development as well.
Okay. Again, we're talking newer techs, we're talking seasoned techs, you're talking different entities, infection prevention, surgical techs, doctors, all of these people coming together and then networking in that way as well. So because he has that vested interest in what happens in sterile processing or infection prevention, is making sure that, hey, are y'all putting out the right information? You got the aim.
Right. And there's not a school for infection preventionists to learn about sterile processing. So
Right.
A lot of times they're coming in specifically for this, to learn and to network and to grow themselves, to learn more about sterile processing and how they can, what they take back. A lot of times infection preventionists are talking to me about auditing, or they're talking to me about when they're putting together their own risk program each year, what qualifies as high risk, medium risk, low risk as it pertains to sterile processing. So there's really wonderful opportunities.
Can a chapter help in that instance? Can a chapter help somebody get with Amy so they can on the Amy committees, or do you have information that they can look up and say if they needed to know more information about the Joint Commission, or they wanted to know stuff about, as we talked about AST, they hear the acronyms out there, but they don't know exactly what it is. Can your chapter help people with that?
100%. And a lot of chapters on their website have links. So
Okay.
on our website, we have a ton of educational links on how to find free CEs.
Okay.
The educational sites for if any vendor participates with us, then they send us information, we put it up there for folks to jump on and be able to do some searching of their own. So and then as far as a regulatory piece, like I assume we're talking about FDA, CDC, and then the guidelines, AORN, AMI, those type of pieces.
Right.
Absolutely. But the beauty of AMI is that you don't need chapter sponsorship to get involved with that, right?
Okay.
There are not enough of us that are end users that are involved in these committees. So whether that's a larger base committee like ST79, right, as a lot of us call the Bible, the steam sterilization guidelines that so many things go from, or if you're really passionate about endoscopes, ST91 right now, which is Working Group 84, is looking for people. We're drafting a TIR document now we're focusing on transesophageal endoscopes and ultrasound probes. So the beauty about AMI is that, a lot of the work is virtual. They have 2 in-person sessions a year. You can go work on sterile standards, both in the spring and in the fall. So, whether or not you can get there in person, you can still participate and vote on these guidelines, be a part of what's happening here with our industry and trying to, bring us into alignment with what needs to happen, what's the best things to happen for our patients and for our own safety.
I think it was very important that you said right there that you don't necessarily need affiliation with chapters or with any kind of entity to actually be a part of the AMI committee and join in the, further in the industry in that aspect. But if you needed to try to find out how to get that information, a chapter can help you.
Sure. Or you can look up the website, AMI, and how to get involved, how to join. And I encourage you to get involved in whatever you're passionate about. Whatever you're passionate about with this industry, or areas you think that maybe aren't going so well and you can make a difference, jump on in.
And one of the things, like I said, I was asking about the participation levels because it's something like Veronica just said. Most of the time at these conferences, there's not a lot of text, but more management, which is sad because there's a lot of great information. How do you
Yes.
get people to want to be a part of something of this nature? Like even just down to like, how do you get people to want to be a part of the chapter? You're going to be putting on, like you said, events. You're doing two a year. We have the national conference. We have the Amy meetings. You have all these great events and the participation. As you said, there's groups that need people. How do we get that participation level up?
Well, that really is the question, isn't it?
It
As
really
far
is.
and what Veronica says is so true. We, for the first 2 years of COVID, did straight virtual because when we sent out polls, we were so many of the hospitals that normally would send their people. Number one, they didn't have the budget for it.
Right.
Two, there was travel bans in place, which my health system still has travel bans in place. So
Oh
if I
wow.
want to attend any of these conferences, it will come out of my pocket. I can't use my education budget due to the travel plan. And then the third piece is how short-staffed they were. So many folks are still struggling with short staffing, having travelers come in. A lot of leaders are staffed in and helping their own teams. So those are the three variables that my chapter has struggled with. We went live with our first in-person session this last fall, and that went well. It was a much smaller group than what we normally have, but you got to start somewhere, right?
Right. Right. Right.
And even in talking to some of our other with polls, are we going to be able to get the same attendance we had before? We're not sure, but we're going to go for it anyway and hope for the best. What I say about getting involved is it normally ends up about how you advertise it and what your platform is. It's only been in the last 6 years or so that our chapter launched a website, an online payment platform for registration, and those type of pieces. In the past, we would email out. We would mail out registration information, and then our problem was it didn't always end up where we needed it to be in sterile processing because we were sending it to the general mailbox of the hospitals. So the social media platforms seem to be the way to do our best work with advertising our pieces. And the other thing I would say about involvement, one of the changes that our chapter made to our bylaws a few years ago was you used to have to be in a leadership position within an SPD to apply or to be nominated within our board.
Okay.
And what Veronica says right here is promote the text to join the chapters. That's exactly what our thought was. And we changed our bylaws to simply state you must work in a healthcare facility, because that opened up our board to a broader base and to allow people to come in that are up and coming leaders that are passionate, even frontline techs. That some of our frontline techs are so gosh darn knowledgeable, right? Why wouldn't you be involved in your chapter? So I encourage you to look at what opportunities are available for you in your local chapters, because it may surprise you how quickly you can grow and network, regardless of what your role is in your own healthcare organization.
And just in that, I know you're doing the mailers, you say the social media and things like that. Do you, from your standpoint, that face-to-face interaction, do you make trips to other facilities promoting the chapter? Do you, is that something that's part of your networking? Because again, sometimes the face-to-face is the best way to gain that person's attention. Because like I said, the short staffed and leaders not being able to send people all the time or let people go. But sometimes, like I said, that information, as you said, the trickle down because you don't have the direct link to that sterile processing.
Yes. So I'll be honest, in the last 2.5 years, I've not gone on site to help other hospitals simply because of the travel ban.
Okay.
And remember that our chapters are basically not for profit.
Right.
And the only revenue we have coming in is what? Registrations. And with most of us not being live, there was no money coming in, but yet we still had, website maintenance fees. taxes, all those other pieces and things. So what I can share is I know that there are several chapters, my own included, where when people within my state reach out for help, I will go to them and help them. Or I do phone calls, I do mentorship work, I do, hey, if someone calls me and says, I'm really having trouble with this process, or I can't quite get my arms around this problem. If I don't have the solution, but I know one of my vendor friends does, then I connect them, right? So a lot of times it's about that networking and that mentorship where someone reaches out, they have a problem, and then our chapter in some way provides next steps to get down the road. And I think that you'll find that with most leaders within the boards of the chapters, you're going to find that they're very generous with their time and helpful when people call and ask for help.
Keywords in those sentences: networking, networking, networking. Like I said, exchanging those emails, exchanging those phone numbers, taking your card with you, something simple like that, just to make sure that you are remembered, you remember who was there. Because like I said, it always helps, like you say, if you have that problem, reaching out to somebody and just keeping the conversation going. Veronica also says that also management has to or should be a part of a chapter. That is where the ball should start. And that's that leading by example. I'm a part of the chapter. I see the benefits of it. So, hey, let me bring these techs with me so they can benefit the same way that I benefit.
Yes. And I mean, I'll be honest with you. I have not been to HSPA Nationals very many times because I have sent my people in my stead. Right.
Okay.
So I have not been very many times. And I think that part of being a good leader too is when you have someone up and coming making some of those hard choices of, should I go and get that education, or should I send my lead that's really a prime supervisor candidate? Should I send them there and have them bring that information back and teach my team? Right. So management being a part of a chapter is huge. But we also need to make sure that we're promoting our own people within to get them to that education as well.
And again, that's a good point. Like getting to the conference and sending somebody for that experience of meeting all these other great people that are there, seeing what that board of directors look like, seeing that interaction between all of these people coming from all over to this one place to share that information.
That's right.
That is actually a good point. Making sure that your people can get there. If they can go, making sure that your people can get there to experience it at least once. Because I think it's one of those things that everybody needs to go at least once just to get that experience.
Yeah. And I mean, go ahead. Sorry.
I was going to say, from a chapter perspective, do y'all ever send anybody from the chapter perspective? Or is it still just like those individual leaders should be trying to get their people there or as part of getting that experience?
So what we normally do is we have raffles. And usually you need to stay to the end of the conference, the end of the seminar to get to that point. Because if you're not present and we pull your ticket, you're out. So I'm just saying. So we always give away tickets to the next seminar. So we usually give away 2 to 3 tickets for the next seminar that's in state. We have not given away HSPA ones. However, we've had vendor friends pony up. I'll pay for a registration for one person and we raffle that off. Right. So just like our vendor friends will provide HSPA certification books or exam fees, those type of pieces. So I think, really partnering, if you don't have the money to do that, for example, we do not, partnering with your vendor friends to do that is a great opportunity.
I'm going to say I actually got to see that up close. I traveled to these things, and I actually went to a good friend of ours, Sarah B. Cruz's conference, and they gave away a trip to the conference. They gave away a set of study guides for whatever test somebody was trying to work on. So you get to see all of these different things by being a part of these chapters, or even just going to a chapter meeting just to see what it's like. So that was one of the things I took away from that, is that, yes, partnering with those vendors is a very important piece because they are going to be your friends at some point where you need that support from the outside.
Yeah.
So we talked about the educational seminars. We talked about regulatory bodies. We talked about sitting on committees, that vendor support, and the networking. How do the CEUs play into this? Where everybody is always scrambling, hey, I need CEUs, I need CEUs. You do 2 events. How many CEUs can somebody get if they attended just both of your events?
Well, for example, with our state, it's usually between 6 and 7.5 CEs a day. It just sort of depends on if we have that vendor fair or not, right? Because we want to make sure we give time to the people that help us keep the doors open and the lights on.
Right.
But it's not restricted to like just a seminar. You know, there's opportunities where people will do a single CE.
Okay.
You used to see a lot of that with like the AORN chapter in the state of Iowa, where once a month they were meeting in different regions and learning about a topic specific to perioperative care.
Okay. But that's part about what I was asking about. As far as, like you said, when you set up like little viral or Zooms, or you're doing educational Zooms, or you have these links on your webpage for people to go so they can get a lot of their CEUs for recertification by attending your events and going on the chapter website and finding other CEUs, because you said giving them the sites to free CEUs as well.
Yes.
Okay. So again, we've covered how to join, how do you set up a chapter, and all of the key components that actually get you to that point. For the people watching, if you had to give them a takeaway about joining a chapter, or either if if their mind so tells them they want to start something in their area, what would be some key points that you would be able to give them to guide them in that kind of journey?
Well, the first one I would say is look for a local mentor. Look for someone who is in a chapter nearby, and see what you can drum up for some support to bounce ideas off of, and to kind of help you on your journey there. Because in the end, education, everybody's for education, right?
Right.
we want to grow. But the other piece I would say is, if you're on the fence about any of this,
right,
one of the best parts about going to one of these events in person is when you walk in the room, and it doesn't matter if there's 20 people there or 2,000. It is so cool to get out of our little sterile processing departments and get into a room full of people that are all passionate about the same things you are. You talk the same language, you care about the same things. And so many times in SPD, we kind of feel isolated with our work. Certainly it's not a work that's well recognized.
Right.
Right. Most of our patients are asleep and don't know that we exist. However, going into that room full of people that are passionate about what you do, it is so rejuvenating, and it is inspiring. And that doesn't matter. Like the first time I bring one of my newer folks into HSPA and into the keynote speaker and all the lights and all of that, I mean, that is great and that is cool. But the local chapter work, what makes it so cool is everybody doesn't live that far from each other.
Right.
Right. So you're making professional friends and personal ones, and opportunities, for you to grow are literally all around you.
Okay. Again, that's how today, family, we talked about chapters and the growth potential, the education potential, CEUs, working with vendors. All of these things tie together to say, hey, we're here to grow this business. As she said, it's one of those jobs where the patient might not even know what you do or why your name is there or any of that. But without you, their surgery couldn't have been successful. So getting that more education, going to these chapter events, or even going to conference, all of these things are here to network. You get the networking opportunity. You actually get to meet other like-minded individuals, like she said, people who are passionate about what we do on a day in and day out basis and don't get the recognition for it, but they still show up when the time comes. Marie, I again, just some of the statistics that were thrown out there. 50 chapters, 40 states, 5 countries. And just thinking about the number of people in those chapters, the number of people in the chapters in the 5 countries. I saw what the countries were, but I lost count in my head. I was like, oh,
Yeah.
we have chapters across countries across the seas. There's HSPA, or there's just chapters, period.
Yeah.
And just to get that amount of networking is just wonderful and mind blowing that we have that type of range where you have that type of networking that could happen, and people don't know how to tap into that market. So that's why I wanted to do this show today, to give people an understanding of what a chapter is, how it could benefit them, and how they could get involved. I thank you for your time today. It was definitely eye opening, and again, like I said, I'll be, bending your ear for some tips of the trade when we officially do the whole takeover, and you see me putting events together. I'll be like, Marie, come and speak. I heard you say you speak at events. Come and speak. So definitely, for family, that if you're listening and you need a speaker, Marie definitely is a great speaker to have on one of your panels. Come give some education to your staff, or even talk at your chapter meeting. She is available for that. So reach out to her on LinkedIn, and definitely connect. Again, this is what this is about. The podcast itself is time to talk, and this is what we're talking about: connecting people, putting those networking pieces together, and being here for each other. And that's what I wanted to accomplish with this show today, showing you how to get into the know. If you don't know, now you know. Trying to get into the know of what that chapter does for you, how it can benefit you, and just how you can get involved. Again, check out the HSPA website, go to the chapter section for your area or local area. Find out who that president is of that thing. As she said, the number's there. They may have an email there. Reach out to them. Get involved. That's how we're going to succeed as a group. That's how we're going to push the industry forward. Is that everybody showing that we want to grow, we want to learn, we want to be a part of something bigger. Veronica, thank you for joining us. All right, family. Again, this has been Time to Talk. This is Marie Brewer. I am Kenneth Campbell. I definitely appreciate you and thank you for showing up today. And one more shameless plug from me. Get your book. Get your book. Get your book. Definitely make sure you get your book, because at the end of the day, when you see me, I will make sure I sign it for you, and we can have some good conversation about what you read. And then again, this is growing the industry. This is what we're doing. This is pushing leaders forward. As Marie said, you have these people who showing those outstanding qualities of wanting to be a leader, getting them involved, pushing them forward, because we've done this. We've been here for years on top of years, but now the next wave of people coming through, that's what our jobs are: promote, promote, promote. And again, that's what we're doing. Marie, thank you for joining me. Family, thank you for being here. It's been Time to Talk, and I would definitely see you next week on another episode. Thank you.